The last human had fallen. The galaxy thought hope was gone. But deep beneath Earth, forgotten super soldiers were awakening to reclaim what was lost. Subscribe now to witness humanity rise again. The galaxy was silent as Commander Eric Vale stood on the broken ground of the ruined Earth outpost. He was tired, wounded, and alone. But he refused to run. For years, he had fought to protect the last remaining human settlements scattered across distant worlds. Now those worlds were gone, taken by the Varak Dominion, and Eric was the final human still standing in open battle. The air around him smelled of smoke and burning metal. Pieces of destroyed ships lay everywhere like the bones of fallen giants. The sky was dark with enemy drones moving slowly like vultures, waiting for their prey to fall. Eric knew he had no chance of survival, but he didn't care. What mattered to him was buying a few more minutes, a few more seconds, anything that could help the galaxy remember that humans did not surrender easily. He pressed his hand against the deep wound on his side, feeling the warmth of his blood seeping through the suit. Every breath was harder than the last. But his eyes still held the same fire that had carried humanity through centuries of war and loss. He dragged himself toward the defensive turret, its power flickering. He reset the system manually, sparks flying as he punched in the commands. His hands shook, but he didn't stop. The turret roared back to life and blasted into the sky, shooting down 2 enemy drones before the gun overheated. Eric smiled weakly, knowing the small victory meant nothing in the larger battle, but it still felt good to fight back, even for a moment. The ground rumbled as massive Varak walkers approached the outpost. Their red lights glowed like cruel eyes watching him. Eric raised his broken rifle, the barrel bent, the charge cell nearly empty. He fired anyway. The shot barely reached the nearest walker and did no damage. But Eric kept walking forward, step by step, refusing to kneel, refusing to surrender. The walkers opened fire, energy blasts shaking the entire outpost. Eric dove behind a piece of fallen debris, his movements slow but full of determination. He glanced at the sky one last time and whispered to himself that he hoped some part of humanity still existed somewhere, maybe hidden, maybe waiting to rise again. He hoped his death would not be the final silence of an entire species. As the enemy forces closed in, Eric activated one last device, a signal beacon hidden beneath the ground for generations. It glowed faintly, responding to his biometrics. For a moment, he didn't even understand why the beacon reacted to him. He placed his hand on it, feeling a strange warmth from the old technology. He didn't know that long ago, scientists had built a secret failsafe linked to the life signs of human commanders. He didn't know that the moment his heart stopped beating, something deep beneath Earth would awaken. Eric pushed himself upright again and stood tall despite his shaking legs. He faced the Varak forces with a calm expression, accepting his fate. He refused to let fear control his final moments. To him, dying was not the tragedy. Being forgotten was. And he would not let humanity's story fade into darkness without giving everything he had left. The enemy commander stepped forward, a towering armored being who looked at Eric with cold amusement. It spoke in a harsh metallic voice, telling him he was the last human, the final one, and that the galaxy would never fear his kind again. Eric didn't reply. He simply raised his head and stared back with defiance. The commander fired a single energy blast, striking Eric in the chest. Eric fell slowly, almost peacefully, his eyes still open, still burning with that same human fire. As his body collapsed onto the shattered ground, the beacon behind him hummed louder, responding to the final drop in his vital signs. A silent message pulsed through hidden tunnels beneath the Earth's crust, activating systems long forgotten. Eric did not know what his death had awakened, but his sacrifice was not meaningless. His heartbeat faded, and with it, the era of natural-born humans came to an end. But far below the planet's surface, ancient cryochambers began to glow, lights flickering on after centuries of darkness. Machines hummed, gears turned, and something powerful began to rise again. Humanity had fallen on the battlefield, but deep underground, its forgotten super soldiers were about to wake, and the galaxy was about to learn that the story of humans was far from over. Deep under the destroyed surface of Earth, far below the ashes, the oceans of dust and the broken cities, a quiet machine had been waiting for centuries. It was older than any living being in the galaxy, created in a time when humanity still had hope. still believed it could survive anything. For hundreds of years, the machine had been silent, surrounded by darkness. But the moment Commander Eric Vale's heartbeat stopped, the silence broke. A single pulse of energy spread through the underground network, like a spark waking a sleeping giant. The pulse traveled through long tunnels filled with forgotten cables, past rusted panels and collapsed chambers. Every few seconds, another ancient sensor lit up, glowing blue in the darkness. The system recognized Eric's biometric signature, the final signal it was programmed to wait for. Humanity had created Project Revenant as a last option, a final hope to protect the species if the worst ever happened. That moment had finally arrived. In a massive underground vault, sealed behind layers of metal thicker than a starship hull, cryopods stood in long rows. Each pod held a genetically engineered super soldier. Men and women who were stronger, faster, and smarter than any natural-born human. They had been created not for fame or glory, but for survival. They were humanity's shield. But the galaxy had forgotten them because humanity had vanished before waking them up. Now the vault lights flickered, slowly at first, then brighter with every passing second. Dust fell from the ceiling as old machinery began to move again after hundreds of years. Motors hummed, gears turned, and cooling systems hissed softly as they came to life. The cryopods remained still, but their screens lit up with biometric readings. Names, heart rates, and mission objectives flashed in glowing letters. The system scanned every pod one by one, checking life signs, repairing old damage, refilling missing compounds. It was like watching an ancient temple awaken from the dead. Each process was slow but steady. The machine had waited far too long to fail now. Outside the vault, deeper in the shadows, a control room powered on automatically. Lines of text scrolled across old screens showing warnings and updates. Global Commander terminated, the display reported. Protocol Revenant activated. The system repeated the message again and again, as if reminding the empty room that something important had begun. Inside pod number 01, a faint heartbeat appeared on the monitor, weak at first, then stronger. It belonged to Captain Kale Dravos, the leader of the Revenant squad. His body had not aged a single day in the centuries he had slept. His face calm, his hair silvered artificially for identification, his muscles preserved perfectly in ice. A warm light spread inside the pod as the cryo locks released. Steam rolled out and filled the vault like fog. Slowly, Kale's fingers twitched, his eyes moved beneath closed lids. He was not awake yet, but the process had begun, the first signs of life returning to the ones who were never supposed to die. In pod number 07, another heartbeat appeared, belonging to Lyra Solin, the squad's medic and one of the brightest minds humanity had ever produced. She had volunteered for the Revenant program, even though she knew she might never wake again. Her dream was simple, to protect what remained of humanity, no matter how long it took. One by one, all 20 pods activated, each showing the steady rhythm of life returning. The vault filled with more lights, more sound, more movement. The ancient system released a soft chime, signaling that Phase 1 was complete, but Phase 2 had already begun. Large mechanical arms lowered from the ceiling, updating armor, repairing weapons, and preparing the environment for the soldiers' return. Everything had been planned long ago. Humanity knew that if these soldiers ever woke, they would wake into a broken world, one that needed them more than ever. Far above, on the surface of Earth, enemy scanners detected unusual energy spikes underground. The Varak Dominion would soon send forces to investigate, but they had no idea what was rising. They believed the planet was empty, that humanity was dead, that nothing dangerous remained. They were wrong. Inside the vault, Kale's eyes finally opened, glowing faint blue under the cryolight. He took a deep breath, the first in hundreds of years. His mind filled with confusion, memories, and mission data all at once. He did not know that Eric Vale had died moments earlier, but the system would tell him soon, and the truth would change everything. The forgotten super soldiers were waking, and with them, humanity's final hope was coming back to life. The galaxy thought humans had fallen forever, but deep underground, destiny was preparing to rise again. The vault was filled with a low, humming sound as the cryosystem slowly shut down, releasing clouds of white mist that curled over the metal floor like soft smoke. One by one, the pods unlocked, their heavy doors opening with deep mechanical clicks. Inside them, the super soldiers began to move for the first time in centuries. Their bodies were strong, but their minds struggled to adjust after such a long sleep. It was like waking from the deepest dream, one that had no beginning and no end. Captain Kale Dravo stepped out of his pod first. His bare feet touched the cold floor, and he took a long breath, feeling the weight of the world settle onto his shoulders. His eyes, sharp and pale blue, scanned the vault with a mixture of confusion and readiness. He didn't remember falling asleep, and he didn't understand why the world around him looked old, worn, and covered in layers of dust. Something was wrong. Deeply wrong. He activated his neural link, and a flood of information filled his mind. The system updated him about the current state of Earth, the fall of the last human outpost, and the death of Commander Eric Vale. Kale felt a sharp pain in his chest at the news, not because he knew Eric personally, but because Eric had been the last natural-born human alive. His death meant something far greater. It meant humanity was gone, completely. Behind him, Lyra Solon stumbled slightly as she emerged from her pod. Kale quickly held her steady, and she breathed out slowly, her eyes adjusting to the dim light. She looked around, her expression tightening as she noticed the dust, the cracks on the walls, the old machines barely holding together. It was clear to her that they had been asleep far longer than the scientists predicted. Across the vault, the rest of the Revenant squad awakened. Some stretched their limbs, others tested their reflexes. A few tried to make sense of the memories flashing in their neural implants. They gathered near Kale, forming a defensive circle out of instinct. They had been trained for war, and war was the only thing they understood completely. Kale finally spoke, his voice steady and calm. He explained to them the situation. Humanity had fallen, Earth had been conquered, and the galaxy believed humans were extinct. The squad listened silently, each face showing a different kind of pain: anger, sadness, confusion, disbelief. They had been created to protect humans, but there were no humans left to protect. Lyra knelt beside a damaged console, wiping away the dust with her hand. She managed to restore a weak hologram of the archive logs. The final messages left by the scientists appeared one by one. Some were emotional, some were desperate, some were hopeful. They spoke about the Varak invasion, the collapse of human colonies, and their last wish that the Revenants, if awakened, would avenge humanity and keep its memory alive. The holograms faded, leaving the entire squad in silence. Kale clenched his fists. He had always been calm and controlled, but now he felt something powerful rising inside him. Not just anger, but duty. The kind of duty that did not weaken with time, the kind that defined his very existence. They began exploring the vault, moving like shadows through the halls. Every step they took revealed more signs of decay: cracked walls, dead lights, and machines covered in dust. It was painful to see the place that once represented hope now reduced to ruins. But the vault still had enough power to supply equipment, weapons, and armor. The soldiers quickly prepared themselves for the world above. Their armor, once shining silver, had turned darker with age, but still strong. Their weapons hummed when activated, sharp and deadly, designed for wars the galaxy had forgotten. Each soldier felt the familiar weight of the gear, and with it, a sense of purpose returned. When they reached the main exit tunnel, they paused, listening to the distant rumble of the Earth's surface. The sounds were unfamiliar. The air smelled different, thinner, older. They knew the world they once trained for no longer existed, but that didn't stop them. They were made for survival, made for battle, made to carry the human legacy into the future. Kale placed his hand on the massive door that led to the surface. The system recognized his command and began opening the gate slowly. A bright beam of light cut through the darkness, forcing the Revenants to shield their eyes. When the door finally rose, they stepped out into a world they didn't recognize. A world broken, burnt, and silent. They stood there quietly as the wind blew dust across the barren land. Kale felt the weight of all humanity on his shoulders, but he also felt their strength. Their story wasn't over, not while he and his squad were alive. The galaxy thought humans had vanished, but now the forgotten super soldiers had risen, and they were ready to begin the long fight back. Far away in the cold darkness of space, the Varak Dominion monitored every world they had conquered. Their scanners were sharp, their patrol ships countless, and their confidence stronger than ever. To them, Earth was nothing more than a dead planet, a forgotten rock with no life left on it. They believed their victory was complete, the humans erased, the resistance crushed forever. But then, something strange happened. Something that should not have been possible. Deep scanners picked up an energy spike coming from Earth's underground layers. At first, the Varrock officers thought it was a glitch, an error in the system. But when the signal appeared a second time, stronger and clearer, they grew suspicious. A Dominion warship orbiting nearby immediately sent the data to the nearest command station. The message caused a chain reaction of alarms, analysis, and angry discussions. The Dominion leader for the Earth sector, Commander Vurak, a tall armored being with chrome blue plating, studied the scans with irritation. He had believed Earth was secure, fully destroyed, and no longer a threat. Now the readings suggested movement, heat signatures, and energy patterns far below the planet's surface. These were not natural. Something was alive down there, something hidden. Commander Vurak summoned his tactical officers, and they reviewed the last known information about Earth. Their files said that all remaining human forces had been eliminated, including Commander Eric Vale. The Varrock soldiers had witnessed his fall themselves. To them, humans were weak creatures who fought bravely, but ultimately died too easily. They had no idea that beneath Earth's soil lay something far different from ordinary humans. Despite his certainty that no human could have survived, Vurak took no risks. He ordered a squad of reconnaissance units to be sent to Earth's surface, fast and silent. Their mission was simple: locate the source of the underground signals and report immediately. They were not expecting danger, just answers. The first group landed on Earth near the ruins of an old city. The once tall buildings were now broken towers leaning against each other like old bones. Dust clouds hung in the air, and strange winds moved across the land. The planet was lifeless, silent, and cold. The Varrock soldiers scanned the area, confused when they found no signs of animals, no plants, no human structures left intact, only destruction everywhere. But the underground readings continued, rising slowly, pulsing like a heartbeat. The Varrock team followed the signals until they reached a cracked valley where the ground had once been torn apart by heavy missiles. Their sensors led them to a point directly above the Revenant vault. They stared at the readings in disbelief, unable to understand how a place so deep could produce so much energy after centuries of silence. Commander Vurak watched the mission through live holograms. His eyes narrowed as he examined the data. He began to suspect that humans had hidden something powerful before their extinction, something that the Varrock had not discovered during their sweep of the planet. The idea annoyed him. Humans were not supposed to be clever enough to keep secrets from the Dominion. He ordered the reconnaissance team to begin drilling. Their machines extended long metal claws and began tearing into the earth. But the moment they reached a certain depth, something unexpected happened. Their scanners suddenly glitched. The ground shook violently, and a strange vibration traveled up through the machines. Before the Varrock soldiers could react, a blinding flash of energy erupted from below, sending shockwaves across the valley. The drilling machines exploded, throwing metal fragments in every direction. The soldiers were thrown to the ground, their armor cracking from the impact. Vurak watched in shock as the live feed turned into static and went dark. Not a single signal returned from the squad. They had not even screamed. They had simply vanished in a burst of underground power. For the first time in years, the Varrock Dominion felt a ripple of uncertainty. Something had awakened beneath Earth, something strong enough to destroy an entire squad in seconds. It was not a human rebel, not a machine, not any kind of weapon the Dominion recognized. Vurak's jaw tightened as he issued new orders. He sent a full assault team to Earth, prepared for battle. But even as he gave the command, he felt a strange unease running through him. He did not know what he was going to face. But instinct told him it was dangerous. He had no idea that the Revenants, the strongest humans ever created, were rising, and soon the Varrock would learn what it meant to fight foes who did not break, did not fear, and did not die easily. The enemy believed Earth was finished, but the awakening beneath the planet would soon prove how wrong they were. The Revenants reached the shattered surface of Earth just as the wind carried the faint sound of engines across the barren land. Kale Dravos stopped walking, raising his hand for the squad to freeze. His sharp senses, enhanced far beyond normal humans, detected movement long before the others saw anything. The ground trembled slightly beneath their feet, and the air carried the scent of burning fuel. Something was coming, something hostile. The squad formed a silent formation behind Kale, spreading out like shadows across the cracked earth. Their armor blended with the ash-covered ground, and their breathing slowed as they prepared for combat. None of them had fought in centuries, but their training was written into their DNA. Their bodies remembered every motion, every instinct, every tactic. From behind a ridge of broken stone, the first Varrock scouting craft rose into view. Its metal wings spread wide, glowing with blue heat. Its scanners moved across the landscape, sweeping for signs of life. The Dominion soldiers inside were confident, relaxed, and unaware of the danger waiting below them. They believed Earth was empty, that humans were extinct. Kale waited until the craft flew low enough, then gave a small hand signal. The revenants moved with explosive precision, leaping from their hiding spots with speed that shocked the Varrock crew. In an instant, the super soldiers reached the craft, tearing into its metal frame before the aliens could even react. Lyra Solon jumped onto the wing, slicing through the scanner panel with a charged blade. Another soldier, Rax, punched through the cockpit, dragging a terrified Varrock pilot out by the armor. The pilot stared in disbelief. He had never seen a human move like this, never seen a human with such strength. He tried to send a distress call, but Kale crushed the transmitter in his hand before the message could be sent. The Varrock soldiers finally realized something was wrong. Their armor rolled open, weapons activated, and harsh metallic voices shouted warnings. But it was too late. The Revenants fought with a level of brutal efficiency the Dominion had never experienced. They were faster than machines, stronger than beasts, and smarter than any soldier the Varrock had created. Kale grabbed a Varrock trooper by the arm and twisted, sending him crashing into two others. Lyra dodged a plasma shot and threw a compact grenade under a scouting walker. The explosion flipped the machine over, and dust flew across the broken valley like a sandstorm. Rax leaped onto a heavy gunner unit, snapping its power core out with one swift motion. To the Varrock, it felt like the battle was happening in slow motion. Every time they aimed, the Revenants were no longer there. Every time they shielded, the humans broke through. It was as if they were fighting ghosts made of pure muscle and steel. One alien officer tried to retreat, stumbling backward as Kale approached. The officer shouted something in fear, claiming humans were supposed to be dead. Kale didn't bother responding. He simply stepped forward and knocked the alien out with one precise strike. His face remained calm, but inside him burned a cold, focused rage. After only minutes, the battlefield fell silent. The Varrock squad lay defeated, their weapons scattered across the ground. Smoke rose from the wreckage of their craft. The Revenants stood together, hardly tired, their breathing steady, their armor glowing faintly from the heat of battle. Lyra wiped dust off her visor and scanned the bodies. She found a small data module attached to a fallen officer. The moment she connected it to her wrist pad, a hologram flickered into view. It showed the Varrock Dominion plans. More troops were coming, heavier forces. They had detected the awakening underground and were preparing a full invasion strike. Kale studied the hologram in silence. His jaw tightened. He knew this was only the beginning. If the Dominion believed humans were still alive, they would try to wipe out whatever remained. The Revenants could not allow that. They had awakened to protect humanity's legacy. And even if no natural-born humans were left, their mission remained the same. Rax stepped forward, asking what their next move was. Kale looked at the destroyed craft, then at the sky, where smoke trails indicated more enemy ships approaching. He answered with a steady voice, saying they would not hide, they would not run. They would fight, and they would show the galaxy that humanity still had warriors capable of turning fear into legend. As the next wave of Varrock forces entered Earth's atmosphere, the Revenants prepared for a new battle. Their first strike had been quick, deadly, and overwhelming. Now the Dominion knew something terrifying. Humans had returned, and these humans did not fall easily. The war that the galaxy thought was over was about to begin again, and this time, the super soldiers of Earth were ready to write a new chapter of vengeance and survival. The revenants moved cautiously through the ruins of the old Earth outpost. Every step kicked up clouds of ash, and every corner held shadows that seemed to stretch endlessly. They were not exploring out of curiosity, but out of necessity. They needed to understand what had happened while they slept. They needed to know why humanity had fallen, and if anything remained that was worth saving. Kale led the squad into a central archive building. Its walls cracked and charred from past battles. Dust hung thick in the air, and broken screens flickered faintly, powered by emergency batteries that had lasted far longer than anyone expected. Lyra immediately began scanning the terminals, her fingers moving over controls as she restored files. The revenants watched silently, their enhanced senses absorbing everything, from the smell of burnt metal to the faint vibrations beneath the floor. The first holograms appeared. Flickering images of scientists, engineers, and military officers who had lived and worked in this place centuries ago. They spoke of hope, fear, and desperation, recording messages to anyone who might survive. One message showed a woman in a lab coat, her eyes tired but determined, telling the future humans that if they ever awoke, they must continue the fight. The revenants listened, feeling a strange mixture of sadness and purpose. Kale studied the logs carefully. His mind absorbing data at incredible speed, he learned how humanity had spread across colonies, how they had fought bravely against alien invaders, and how one by one those colonies had fallen. Each failure had been recorded meticulously. Every battle, every lost settlement, every moment of courage and loss. The history of mankind flashed before their eyes, and it was both inspiring and heartbreaking. Lyra found a file labeled Project Revenant, the original design for the super soldiers themselves. She studied the documents, noting the scientists' intentions, the experiments, the choices made to enhance strength, speed, reflexes, and intelligence. They were not meant to be conquerors, but protectors, a final defense against total extinction. Kale read the notes silently, feeling a heavy weight settle on his shoulders. The humans of the past had sacrificed everything to ensure that someone, somewhere, could rise if the end ever came. The squad explored further, finding weapon caches, training logs, and medical supplies. Each discovery reminded them that humanity had fought until the very end, and that the revenants were the continuation of that fight. They realized that every action they would take now had meaning far beyond their own lives. They were not just soldiers. They were the memory and will of a species that had almost been erased. Suddenly, a recording appeared on a large terminal showing Arik Vale, the last natural-born human, standing in a ruined battlefield. He spoke to the camera, explaining the dire state of the galaxy and the final hope that Project Revenant could bring if awakened. The Revenants watched silently as the recording ended. Kale felt a surge of determination. Knowing that Arik had died believing humanity was finished, they would prove that hope had never truly died. The Revenants then discovered hidden maps of the galaxy, showing planets once colonized by humans, each marked with data about resources, defenses, and threats. They began planning, realizing that Earth was only the first step, that their mission was far greater than reclaiming one world. Their purpose was to restore humanity's presence in the galaxy, to make the memory of their species live again. As they prepared to leave the archive, Kale turned to his squad, speaking with quiet authority, telling them that every skill they had learned, every battle they had been trained for, would be needed to face the challenges ahead. They were no longer just soldiers. They were the legacy of humankind, armed with knowledge, weapons, and determination, ready to confront any enemy that thought humans could be forgotten. Outside, the ruined city lay silent, but the Revenants felt a pulse in the air, as if the planet itself knew they were awake. They moved with purpose, scanning the horizon for threats and opportunities. Every step guided by the lessons of the past, every piece of knowledge they had uncovered strengthened them, made them smarter, and reminded them of what they were fighting for. The Revenants knew one thing clearly. The galaxy had underestimated humans. They had assumed humanity was gone forever, but the truth was far different. They had awoken, they had learned, and now they were ready. The discoveries of the archives had transformed them from soldiers into avengers, protectors, and symbols of a species that refused to disappear. And with every passing moment, the Revenants prepared to strike back at the forces that had destroyed their world. determined to ensure that humanity would never again be forgotten. The revenants moved cautiously across the scarred surface of Earth, their eyes scanning the horizon for any signs of movement. The wind carried dust and ash, swirling around broken buildings and shattered streets. Each step reminded them of the centuries they had spent asleep and the world they had returned to. A world in ruins, yet still alive with possibility. Kale Dravos led the squad with quiet determination, his mind calculating strategies, remembering training simulations, and connecting every piece of knowledge they had recovered from the archives. The galaxy believed humans were extinct, but Kale knew better. Humanity was not gone. It was waiting, watching, and now it was ready to rise. The first task was reclaiming what remained of Earth's key territories, starting with old military bunkers, weapons depots, and resource caches. Each location was guarded by Dominion scouts, but the revenants moved like shadows, striking silently and efficiently. Their enhanced speed and strength allowed them to dismantle patrols before alarms could even sound. In one abandoned outpost, the revenants found long-dormant warships, battered but repairable. Kale ordered the squad to restore them. Lyra and other engineers worked quickly, using ancient blueprints and modern ingenuity to power the ships back to life. By the end of the day, they had several vessels ready to patrol the skies, signaling that humanity had returned not just underground, but above the surface as well. While reclaiming these territories, the revenants encountered scattered alien collaborators, species that had once allied with humans, but had been forced under Dominion control. Some were frightened, hiding in ruined cities. Others were skeptical, believing humanity was dead. Kale approached them with caution, showing strength, confidence, and the proof that humans were alive and organized. Gradually, the alien allies joined them, providing intelligence, supplies, and sometimes manpower. The squad also began building a network of sensors and communications. Using hidden locations and underground tunnels, they connected their forces across Earth, preparing for the inevitable Dominion counterattack. Each sensor allowed them to monitor incoming ships, track enemy movements, and plan strikes before the Dominion could react. Kale explained that intelligence was as deadly as firepower, and every piece of information could save lives. The revenants trained relentlessly, honing their combat skills, testing their weapons, and running simulations of Dominion attacks. They remembered what had happened to the colonies, and they refused to repeat the mistakes of the past. Every soldier pushed beyond limits, every motion practiced until it became instinct. Humanity's strength was not just in numbers, but in discipline, knowledge, and adaptability. Kale spent long hours analyzing Dominion strategies, piecing together their likely plans from captured data modules. He realized that the enemy relied heavily on overconfidence and underestimated any human resistance. That assumption was now humanity's greatest advantage. With careful planning, Kale could turn every Dominion attack into an opportunity for counterstrikes, showing the galaxy that humans had returned not as prey, but as predators. As the revenants secured more territory, rumors of their actions spread quickly among the Dominion forces. Small attacks, sudden ambushes, and mysterious disappearances fueled fear and uncertainty. Reports reached the highest Dominion leaders that humans, thought extinct, were alive, organized, and striking with precision. Confidence began to crack, and whispers of caution spread among enemy ranks. Kale addressed his squad one evening as they rested atop a ruined building, overlooking the darkened city below. He spoke quietly but firmly, reminding them of the sacrifices that had brought them here, of the knowledge gained from the archives, and of the lives of every human who had fallen. "We are the continuation of our species," he said. "The galaxy believes humans are gone, but we are alive, we are strong, and we will make them remember us." The revenants listened in silence, feeling a surge of purpose that went beyond survival. They were no longer just soldiers. They were symbols of hope, vengeance, and determination. Their mission had grown from protecting remnants of humanity to rebuilding its presence in the galaxy. Every action, every battle, every strategic move was part of a larger plan, a plan to ensure that humans would never again be forgotten. As night fell, Kale activated a long-range communications array, sending coded signals to scattered allies across nearby star systems. Slowly, the galaxy began to realize that the humans had not vanished, that the forgotten super soldiers had risen from the ashes, and that a new chapter of human history was about to begin. One filled with courage, strategy, and the unstoppable will of a species determined to rise again. The Revenants advanced toward the Varak Warforge, a massive facility where enemy ships were built and repaired. Its walls were lined with metal plating, glowing with the heat of molten energy and the hum of machines. Kale Dravos led his squad with quiet determination. Their enhanced senses detected every movement, every vibration, every distant sound of the enemy preparing for war. The Varak believed Earth was empty, but the Revenants knew better. They moved like shadows across the barren battlefield, staying low and avoiding the patrols scattered across the terrain. Their training, enhanced reflexes, and precise coordination allowed them to strike without warning. Each step was calculated, every motion silent yet deadly. They were predators hunting a prey that had once thought itself the conqueror. Kale signaled for the first strike, and the Revenants split into small teams. Each team targeting a different part of the Warforge, Lyra and her engineers focused on shutting down the energy cores, while Rax and others disabled the defense turrets. Each movement was synchronized, a perfect combination of speed, strength, and strategy. The first alarm sounded when the Revenants reached the outer perimeter. Varak soldiers rushed to defend the facility. Their energy weapons glowed in the dim light, but the Revenants were already moving. Faster than the eye could follow, stronger than any normal soldier, they struck with precision, dismantling squads before they could organize. Kale entered the central chamber, where the main ship assembly lines stretched as far as the eye could see. Massive warships were suspended in midair by anti-gravity fields, molten metal flowed in channels along the walls, and the heat from the machinery was almost unbearable. He signaled his team, and they fanned out. Taking positions to disable the entire operation, Lyra connected a portable hacking device to the central console. Overriding the systems, she caused alarms to flash wildly and assembly lines to halt. Sparks flew, energy shields flickered, and the entire facility shook as machines went offline. The Varak workers panicked, running for safety, but the Revenants were already in control. Every move deliberate, every strike lethal. Kale faced a towering Varak commander. Heavily armored and confident, "Humans are dead," the commander shouted. "You are nothing." Kale did not flinch. He raised his weapon and advanced, moving faster than the eye could follow. Within moments, the commander was disarmed and incapacitated. The display of human power was overwhelming, a reminder that the galaxy had underestimated them. Across the forge, the smaller teams destroyed machinery, captured enemy soldiers, and secured vital information. Every piece of data revealed the Dominion's plans, their next targets, and weaknesses in their strategy. The Revenants now had not only control of the forge, but also intelligence that would turn the tide of the war. As the battle continued, Kale moved to the observation deck, watching the sky above, where more Dominion ships approached in retaliation. He activated the newly repaired warships, and they launched in formation, attacking the incoming fleet with precision. Missiles streaked across the dark sky, energy beams lit the clouds, and the Dominion realized too late that Earth was no longer defenseless. The Revenants fought relentlessly, their movements fluid and coordinated. Their experience, training, and enhanced abilities made them unstoppable. Dominion forces were pushed back, suffering massive losses, and the once feared Warforge was now under human control. Kale stood in the control room, looking at the maps and live feeds. He knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy had thought humanity was gone, that humans were weak, and that their story had ended. But the Revenants had proven otherwise. Humanity had returned, stronger, smarter, and unyielding. He addressed his squad. "This is the start, not the end," he said, his voice calm but powerful. "The galaxy will remember us. They will see that humans cannot be destroyed, that we rise even when all hope is gone. Today we take back what was ours, and tomorrow we take the fight to every world that thought they had won." The Revenants stood together, victorious but ready, their eyes fixed on the horizon, knowing that more battles awaited. The Varak Dominion had underestimated them. The galaxy had doubted them. But now, humanity's super soldiers had risen, and the universe would never forget. As fires burned across the warforge and smoke filled the sky, the Revenants prepared for the next phase of their mission. They had reclaimed Earth's power, gathered allies, and sent a clear message to the galaxy. Humans may fall, but they never stay down. The super soldiers of Earth had risen from the shadows, and their vengeance, strength, and determination would shape the fate of the galaxy.